pre-approval so that they feel comfortable moving forward with engineering and getting the plat finalized. So.
Now that little blue part that, after the curve to the right of it, that goes up, what is that? Is that just Cemetery Road there?
Yeah, and I think that could be a little bit adjusted. Drew and I have talked about that. Drew, do you want to comment? This is kind of affecting you.
Well, talking with Chuck and Hortix, the idea was to get the primary purpose was to get this other alignment lined up. The fine tuning of the cemetery master plan can be tweaked a little bit. This is just a shell. We have some ideas on the actual proposal that we would like to do, but time is not on our side on this. We are needing to move to the south pretty quick.
That's one thing that we need to, probably ought to be one of our focuses now, priorities, is finishing up that cemetery master plan. Obviously, we know now that 8 South is probably 99% likely to stay where it's at. And then the cemetery master plan will revolve around that. And so if 8 South stays where it's at, as this depicts, then that east side that affects the developer will be like this. There's no reason to have that funny S curve as previously shown. So it's pretty cut.
And we've already acquired the property for the cemetery.
Yeah, we own that.
I might add, we have the cemetery property, but we have not acquired the easements and stuff
For the winter.
for the curve there where it comes to 40. And that's what's in negotiation.
Yeah.
And working on it.
And again, regardless if that happens or not, everything else from that point to the east is most likely going to end up exactly how it's shown here. Any other questions? We can entertain a motion just so that we have the consent of the council, I guess, on this.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Baird and a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next is Roosevelt Meadows Phase 2 minor subdivision. Kyle or Jordan?
I made my presentation very simple. Just like to have a minor subdivision preliminarily approved. It would be lots 3 and 4. Rodeo Drive lines up with the new street that we would propose that you can see in green. I think you've had a discussion about it already. Happy to answer any questions.
The only thing that I would say is I did have a little bit of concern with that curve in between our planning and zoning meeting and now. I got the exact depth of that because I figured if we could go the same depth and just made that road straight, that would be a good thing. However, 86 feet I think is the deepest, and that doesn't allow really even for a home be put on there very well. So that was one of my concerns in planning and zoning. However, I have had that resolved since then, and so I feel comfortable with what's being proposed.
This is in fact commercial property with a haystack on
The lots 3 and 4.
The only other thing that came up, Dean, and if I'm saying too much, was there, the development of the road from 8 South into Meadowbrook, and who would be responsible to make sure that that road is built. And I guess was that going to be the developer at that time, or how were we going to work
it. I
that?
thought you decided the city was going to do that.
What?
Oh, I heard it.
That's the first joke I've heard. Yeah, just there.
That one there would be the responsibility of the developer. That would be, as part of this minor subdivision, would be the creation of 2 lots, and the responsibility to install that road to the back of that line with including all the utilities and water, sewer, everything, just like a regular subdivision.
And this is, again, this is just preliminary. They'll come back for final approval and we can work some of those things out then. But as long as we, in a motion, when the final plat comes through, that we make sure that the developer does that, and then that's followed through when they come and get a building permit.
That is really gonna be the design that we bring back for the final plat, and it will show us making those.
Okay.
Right, it would include the curb and gutter along 800. So hopefully engineering is in place, to help do that. I know we got curb and gutter over in your previous stuff, so I'm sure just a continuation of that. But like Gordon says, that'll be part of the construction document. That's when we come in for a final plat approval.
Excellent. Any questions? Any further questions on that?
So the reason that it's being jogged is to, those lots below 4 will be usable for building something. That's the
Yes.
purpose of the little swerve.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be big enough to build anything on.
86 feet is
They're
not,
not deep, they're not really deep enough, yes.
Okay.
we have
I wish
set,
they were, it just isn't. So it's the way it is.
And as Gordon mentioned, the front block area is all zone commercial. Once we get through the first block area, then everything going south is an R16.
Yeah.
So, right, down there. So everything from that point forward is commercial. So if we did anything, wanted to do anything different with the houses that are part of Gill's Acre, then they have to come in and get a zone change. And change that to a different zone if they want to do anything residential with that.
and just to give you an idea, the setbacks on the front, on the rear are 30 feet on the front, 30 feet on the rear for the home. And so you take 60 feet out of 86 feet, you don't even really have much of a garage.
These are just gonna be my home.
And so it's really not feasible. So just to add to it.
And maybe just another point. I believe it's Nate.
Okay, Kyle.
Kyle, excuse me. I don't know.
Pretty close.
I think Kyle even mentioned this when he came in and talking with Jerry Allred. Rodeo Drive, when it was created, coming up from Stewart's, evidently there was a little something that wasn't tweaked right, and that's one reason why it maybe should be over this way a little bit more, where we wouldn't have this jog as much. But this is a correction to keep it aligned so that that's straight across. If it's misaligned, and talking with the police, checking everybody else, especially on a four-way stop, nobody knows who has right of way. And so that's one reason why we have this
The
jog.
right of ways aligned, improvements in the rail drive are not centered in your right of way.
So the 2 lots below lot 4, south of lot 4, those 2 will be commercial also.
They're in
There's
commercial.
commercial, okay.
Is it likely,
No haystacks.
Now, it should be mentioned that the 2 lots below are not part of this minor subdivision.
Yeah, it's just a lot
On the east and the lot on the west, and they end at the green line there. That's what we're dealing with today.
Well, very everything you ask.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion.
I move we approve it.
second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilman Riley and a second by Councilman White. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Councilman White, I would disclose the conflict of interest.
I have some haystack on there.
Well, you would be against it. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, come on, you gotta clarify those things.
All right, next item up for bid is the ordinance 2024-37. This is our current ordinance. I'll try to make this one short because I possibly can. This may take a little time, but we'll try to get through it fairly quickly. So, Melissa, why don't you give us an update where we're at with the city manager, and then that will be a segue into why we're looking at this ordinance right now.
Okay, do you want me to go up there?
How we want to do it.
Doesn't matter?
Whatever you
Okay.
feel comfortable with.
Okay. After the meeting last week,
2 weeks ago.
How often?
they're all running together. when we had finalized an offer, for Scott, I did reach out and give him that offer. He has respectfully declined the offer as is, but is still very interested in being our city manager. The piece where we're getting stuck, is the severance. So we had talked last week about, possibly, making some sort of promise to him that when he left as the city manager, that we would hire him as a police officer so that he could be recertified in the retirement system as public safety, which would allow him to retire on his public safety pension. Anyways, a little bit of research, and we discovered that we can't do that. That's against URS rules, so we don't want to do that. And so he's decided he wants a 6-month severance. And he also doesn't want to wait for that 3-month period. I don't know if you remember, we said, hey, come aboard, we'll do a 3-month review, and at that 3-month review, we can kind of nail out all of these issues that we're having because of this ordinance. We'll fix the ordinance and we'll change it, but he would prefer to just wait until the ordinance has been updated or whatever needs to happen with that, so that when he comes on board, he has the 6-month severance. So that's kind of where we're at. Everything else was fine. The only 2 things was the salary was fine. He still wants a 2 weeks paid vacation, which this may or may not allow us to do, needs fixed, whatever, so we can give it to him. And then a 6-month severance, which will go away after 8 years of employment. So that's his counter back.
So thank you, Melissa, for
You're welcome.
setting that up. So basically, does everybody understand, basically it didn't work out, the plan didn't work out and so we were defaulted back to the severance. Now, one of the things, first of all, and Melissa provided me with, so she mentioned at the last meeting that she had reached out to several cities and to see what they did, and she got responses back, and overwhelmingly, cities have contracts, cities give severance, and those types of things. So what I did in the meantime is I compared our current ordinance to the other ordinances to see, what they have in there, and believe it or not, so I went through and I took yours, and every city that you got a response back from, I
Right.
went and looked at their code,
Mm-hmm.
their administrative code. There were only 2 out of all the ones that you sent me that even mentioned a contract at all.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
So all the other city codes are not much different than ours at all. They don't mention a contract, but they don't mention not having one. And so Grant feels like because it was there and now it's not, it might be hard to do a contract. We might be on shaky ground. I personally don't feel that way, but part of the reason we brought this forward is, do we want to add in 2.04010 or even 2.04030 that there may be a contract? Or
I don't think it's necessary because terms of employment is a contract, and honestly, the verbiage in our last ordinance really didn't say that a contract shall be entered.
it just said I would sign it upon, so it alluded to a contract, but it didn't say it was mandated a contract either. It was kind of weird. Now there are 2 that I did find that they spell out, they say it'll be negotiated by contract, and so we can look at possibly doing some of that.
I don't think that's bad to put in there.
And the severance, if we look at, go down just a little bit. Right there, not up one, it's termination, sorry.
Termination.
Nope, it's down, sorry. No up, no down. No, I'm just kidding. No, just joking.
I'm just hoping the monitor stays up.
Yeah, it might be removal. right there. Oh, yeah. Council may, in their discretion, provide termination pay. And so one thing that I did notice, I got our old city contracts. Interesting enough, even our most recent city manager's first contract and the city manager's contract before that. And they actually say, sorry, I have like 15,000 papers here. They say that that severance is conditioned on a no cause termination. They say, and then they say if he's terminated for cause, what it has to be, and there's 3: criminal conviction of malfeasance of office or official misconduct. So the contract, my biggest thing is not necessarily with what our ordinance said as much as with the contract that was allowed to be approved. And so in some of the ordinances that I noticed, it did say, like in this part, removal of the city manager, if it was for cause, no severance, and then it listed these things out. And if it was, no cause, then they were entitled to a certain severance. And so really the only 2 aspects of our ordinance that I think we even need to talk about, and unless you guys want to talk about more, are, do we want to put in there that the council may enter a contract in the appointment clause? And do we want to spell out a little better the severance part of the contract with cause and without cause, so that in the future, when a contract's drawn, there isn't the possibility of having a contract like we had with a severance not contingent on anything. Because that was the biggest problem that we had with it, is if we let the guy go, even for cause, he was going to get 6 months.
Let's address the first one in terms of the contract. Based on your comment earlier and looking at those, most of them didn't have a contract listed.
No,
And I'm kind of in the same mind as Dave, is saying that I don't know that we need to stipulate that, because to me, if we're hiring someone, there's a contract, kind of, in my mind, there's a contract there already. I just don't see the need to add that, especially if the other cities are similar. As you looked at those, that only 2 mentioned a contract, the rest didn't, and were like ours. I think the issue is the termination, because it says in their discretion by termination, maybe we need to be a little more explicit in that area, or add something to that. That can be negotiated, or
We could even say something like severance pay may be negotiated in contract, upon hiring or something like that.
right. And that's what I'm saying, is something that again, I'm probably wrong, but I'm just thinking, I don't know that we need the contract piece. I think that, to me, the sticking issue or the big issue is the termination, but.
I agree with you 100%. The only thing that I would add in the severance part is I would spell out what we're allowed to give severance for and what we're not. So that as future contracts are created, it takes care of the issue that we encountered with severance being.
Yeah, and I agree 100% that we shouldn't, if it's for cause, we shouldn't have to give severance. But if it's not for cause, I agree that, there needs to be some, security for the person. I also kind of like what Melissa said in terms of after a certain time period that would drop, I think
The reason for that, for this particular individual, is that after that many years, he already has retirement and would
Right.
be seeking.
But you can't collect it though.
And what's really interesting about Scott is most people start with a severance and then it gets bigger as they go. So he's saying, I'm taking the risk up front, and as that risk is reduced, I'm willing to reduce.
Right, and I don't think we need to spell it out
Which is
specifically on
opposite of
time.
everything I've seen.
I don't think we need to spell it out. I think we need to state that it can be negotiated, but that you have to stipulate for cause, there is no severance.
Yeah.
For no cause, then there
And
would
it
be a
would be
severance, and it could be, you could say up to a certain amount of time if you want to stipulate that in terms of like up to 6 months or 4 months severance or whatever you feel is reasonable. But in terms of negotiating it ending at a certain amount of time, I think that could be negotiated by a case, but
I really think what we could do in there is just put in this section of the old contract that states when severance is appropriate and when it's not appropriate to give. And if we just had this much added into our ordinance,
Are you adding that to removal, that section there, add that into that?
yeah,
and
add
that
into the removal.
2.04070.
Yeah,
Or would we need to take out upon such termination and just say the city council? Anyway, would we need to take that part out and add what you're saying?
yeah.
Because we'd already have it decided if we put it in there, correct?
Or we could even leave it pretty much as upon termination. This city, well, we probably wouldn't want to move it. I was gonna say we could put, provide termination pay unless it's negotiated. Because what I saw also is there were some that I looked at that they have policies with
Right.
severance.
Which is what I actually thought of that right away first, when we were like, okay, we can't have a contract, but he wants severance and blah, blah, blah. Instead of writing it into the ordinance, writing policy regarding severance.
And Grant seems to think that that was a little shakier ground. I don't agree, nor do I disagree. I think it's a neutral point. But in the ordinance, I think it would be good. I have seen in the ordinances where their policy is basically written in their ordinance. And the ordinance states that this is the normal procedure unless, and it also puts a little disclaimer in there, unless it's negotiated differently in the administrator's contract. So I don't think it has to be, I mean, we are so close. For example, this is all Spanish Fork says. The city council hereby creates the office of city manager pursuant to Utah Code and annotated 10.3b.303. The manager is appointed by the governing body in accordance with the Utah Code, and which is Utah Code 3b.302, which states that the mayor appoints with the advice of the consent of the council. So that's it.
That's all.
No contract. Linden City, they have in theirs, the mayor by and with the advice and consent of the council may appoint all appointed officers and agents that may be provided for by law or ordinance, and in like manner fill out vacancies. No contract.
So I said, I don't think the contract's issue, I think it's the severance that we need to focus on and how we put that into our.
What made the contract the issue was that we took that out, and then upon hiring a new manager, technically,
No, I,
90% of them have a contract.
I,
and they
but I
don't
still
wanna-
go back to what David said, I think that if you hire someone, there's a contractual, we've negotiated something for them to come in and work and do the job.
So I think there's always the employment negotiation when you hire employees.
So I have two things with that. So we offered the airport manager a severance package. There's nothing in our codes that say we can do that. We're the city council. So if we can do it post-mortem, why can't we do it pre-mortem without something in the code? I mean,
I think we probably could, but
It's the upon such termination, the city council may, so that could be taken away.
and to be honest, when I went and I went and talked to my personal attorney, and I talked to another city legal, about their legal counsel. And they said that as far as creating a contract or not, what our code states is we're fine doing that. But they both said, the fact that it states that upon removal, then you can enter, then you can offer seven, it's not that we couldn't, it's just not as clean. There may be some concerns brought up. And so I get what you're saying, but and I agree with you. I just wonder if
There's
it
implications.
would be, it's really easy to modify that code to say may negotiate a contract prior to termination or upon termination may issue a severance if decided. That easy could solve the whole thing.
Well, I have no issues reworking this ordinance right now because it is in the spirit of what we wanted to do, but we've created a problem, especially with our city manager hire, that we're not allowed to do some common things that are done when you hire them. And so we've got to fix it.
Yeah.
What was your other point, Vince?
The second thing is, I think if you put any wording that says other than cause, to me, in my little mind, that's a big rabbit hole. Because now you have to codify what is cause.
And it is.
Seriously, then he could argue and say, well, you never determined what cause was, and I've met all my standards. I just made you guys upset because I slept with the mailman or something, you know what I'm saying? So it's almost like, in my opinion, I think we just need to offer a severance package. And leave out the cause so we don't get in that rabbit hole battle.
I agree to a degree with you as well. I do see it a little bit differently on the same token because of if we don't specify a little bit, I'm afraid we could get in. Here's the other thing, is Grant supposedly didn't see that the very last city manager's contract, and what in the heck is up with that? Why didn't our legal counsel get an opportunity to look at that and advise on that before that was approved? And so I'm more concerned, I'm with you, so we either have to spell something out, and it does it in a very good way in here, because it does say, it gives 3 things that we can fire for cause, and that is criminal conviction, a felony conviction, or failure to comply with the Municipal Officers and Employees Ethics Act. So those are the three things we can fire him for cause for, nothing else. I mean, if we just.
I think that's important too, because I don't want, if someone gets a felony conviction, they could then, if we just have, what was on the previous contract, they could have got the 6 months severance package no matter what, and they could have ripped the city off. And I'm not saying Scott or anyone's gonna do that, I'm just saying, we want to protect ourselves and the citizens.
Do we have an ethics act to refer to in our own code, or could we refer to the state's ethical codes on that?
Well, I think we could refer to whatever, I'm sure.
Part of the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, I would be more apt to just go with the felony or the felony conviction, or what was the
Or
other?
criminal conviction or malfeasance, so if there's theft,
Right.
or those types of things, or official misconduct as defined in Utah, official misconduct.
What if you just refer to our policy manual?
That on the third one.
Because that's gonna cover all of that stuff anyways, right?
Does
So,
it show in our policy manual, termination for cause, what things that you can be?
well, it's got all the stuff in there that is the cause, right? So
Okay.
just because it's conduct and criminal acts and theft and all those other things, so
Any violation of our own.
personnel manual, right? Which
I
is
like
gonna
that.
cover all that anyways, because that's why you're gonna terminate, right? Because they violated a policy or procedure. And
And we could say, because if we do that, then we could say, well, do we set the policy by resolution, or how do we set that?
no, you don't.
But policy should come before the council.
That's what I'm.
I agree. When I heard you didn't, I was shocked.
Well, and that's actually, where did I read that? I read so much stuff lately. I can't remember.
Anyways, just an idea, because if you say for a violation of our policy manual, that's a bucket that catches anything.
I like
And
that.
that's the same standard we hold all of our employees to.
And what if we put in there, policy is set by resolution by the council or something like that? That way it's required that the council review policy.
However you want to do it, but I think we need to come to some consensus on. So I know Grant's going to say, well, you need, because he made a pretty strong point, at least it's his own personal opinion. But it doesn't mean that we have to. I feel comfortable leaving the contract part out because where it doesn't state it.
What if, I'm sorry, I was just saying, what if in our removal, we say a severance may be negotiated
Through contract.
through,
Or
do you not say contract? Can you say a severance?
I would avoid the word contract because I think it implies a 6-page list of things
Right,
that
I'm
I
just
want
thinking a
from you,
severance
my
may be
employer.
negotiated before, or before employment is offered, or when employment is offered, or something along, and you take contract out, just say negotiated.
in the case that severance has not been negotiated, upon such termination, the city council may in their discretion provide termination pay. Something like that. So you would say,
That covers them both.
yeah,
In other words, I'm just saying, I agree with Melissa, let's just take contract out, but let's say we can negotiate a severance with whoever.
and if we wanted to have a contract, we could. That's
Yeah,
what
then
I'm
if you want one,
saying
great, but
with all of this.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of like,
so there is some gray area, I think, because if the city and the city manager coming in signs a contract, it has to be renewed every 3 years.
No,
No?
no.
Okay, see, that's the great.
See the without
So if
term
you can see crystal clear that, then.
So can you go up a little bit?
So while he's finding that, here's the other thing. What prevents somebody from coming here and 6 months later leaving with $50,000?
They don't, if they quit or they're terminated for cause, they don't get money.
Okay, I didn't hear quit first, so
Yeah.
quitting or terminated with cause, okay.
Yeah,
That
and that's
makes me
why-
feel better.
There was, when Dave and I were talking about this, he was thinking, well, let's do a sign-on bonus to try to get out. I'm like, ooh, wait, let's think about that, because this is a 66% chance he's not walking out of here with anything. If he quits or
Puts the
he,
city in a better position to do a severance package and a sign-on bonus.
or something like that.
Possibility they walk away.
And again, it doesn't have to be 6 months. What I've seen anything from 3 months to a year is what I've seen in this. Have you seen anything less? There may have
no.
been a 2 month
I don't remember seeing
policy.
2 months. I think the average was 6 months.
Yeah.
Scott is asking for 6 months. But yeah, it can be whatever you want.
I think, to me, it'd be better if the council, mayor could negotiate,
I agree. I think you
as
should leave it
opposed
open.
to stipulating a 6 month, you know what I'm saying? I just think
Case by
that gives you a
case.
little, flexibility.
You
Because
bet.
if you get 3 months, great, but if they, if they want a year and that's what you gotta do, then, you know what I'm saying? I just think we don't wanna tie hands of future.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't set it at 6 months. I'm just only saying that to say it doesn't have to be 6
Right,
months.
exactly, but I don't think we stipulate that as a plan. I think we just say negotiate a severance.
And I'm even saying to him, if we aren't comfortable with 6 months, we offer less. If we're comfortable with 6 months, we can,
Right.
So
that's good, let's do that.
could we just say this, appointment of the city manager will be without definite term, period. Salary and severance to be determined or fixed by city council.
Now, on the definite term, what that would mean, doesn't mean we can't have a contract. What that means is there cannot be a 3-year term on that contract. Does that make
The
sense?
state law requires that any contract with the state manager can't have an automatic renewal. And to me, if you're staying without definite term, it seems a little gray to me.
Well, I'll talk to the city attorney in between now, and that was the other question is, I wanted to work through this with the council to see what everyone's comfortable with, and then have it ready to approve in the 1st of October. We could have another meeting, I know you guys love them. We could have another meeting at the beginning of October and approve this with a public hearing.
What was right?
With what we decide tonight to change it to. So we have time in between now and then. I just wanted to get this dialed in, make sure the attorney looks at it and is okay with it, and then bring it back before the council for final approval. And at that time, I would really like to have an offer ready for Scott by that meeting, that first meeting. in
Oh,
October.
absolutely. I could bring it to have it approved
Yeah,
at that meeting, you bet.
And then we could just double whammy, and if he accepts, we're done.
Yeah, and I think appointment isn't talking about the contract. It's the appointment of the position. So when we appoint a city manager, we're not gonna appoint a city manager
For 3 years.
for 3 years.
Concern I have is that if we do a contract, if we do a contract with them, it's a contract, you know what I mean? So if we
But we
want
wouldn't be
without
doing-
definite term,
But we wouldn't be, if we did give them a 3-year or 6-year contract, it wouldn't be contrary to this, because that is not his appointment, that's our agreement for pay. That would be my interpretation of the appointment, should be without definite term.
And I feel like we
The
just
salary,
don't give a certain term in the contract.
Yeah.
There's no,
That's fine, yeah, I have
he's
no
at
problem
will,
with that.
he stays at will. So in the
Yeah.
contract, he gets, his extra week of vacation, 6 months severance, and that's as far as that contract
Does
needs
it
to go.
say in there that pay is evaluated from time to time or?
No, but some
at the
do.
discretion of the council?
Some of them, there was only one, maybe two, that said that pay, that there would be an annual evaluation or some type of evaluation. The rest of them didn't specify that.
I say we wait until he says, hey, I just can't feed my family anymore. Give me a pay raise.
I just want it to be,
I agree.
But we will need to make sure as part of the contract, the week vacation, extra week
Right.
vacation, 6 months severance, and the 6-month evaluation for a raise up to 115.
Right.
So those are the three
Right.
criteria.
Well, I think
that
we're all,
contract
I get you getting all in agreement on being able to negotiate the severance.
is on.
But I don't know about and we approved last time the raise
The
of
salary,
the evaluation. Did we approve the 2 weeks? I thought we were gonna look at that.
Well, what that was, that's what he's asking, and we said that we would
Talk about it at the
at
3
the
month.
3 month, and because that would have constituted an agreement or a contract, and we can't do that until we change the ordinance, but it was intended that that's what would happen,
Right,
so.
that's right.
So let's make the changes we need to make.
What is 2 weeks pretty, is that?
That's pretty standard
For how long?
for everybody.
Yeah,
For our employees though? aren't
No, they get 1 week, but
until.
that's a
how
little
long?
bit unusual.
Can I tell you what I do on-
year, he goes.
Then it goes, so for
Yeah,
a year.
so it's
it'll-
just the first year.
what I do on in the private sector, if I'm, it depends on what position I'm hiring, but if I'm hiring somebody that's trained and I don't have to train them, they already have benefits, they already have this stuff. When I want to hire them on, I don't make them go through the same process as other people.
Right.
So there's a big difference in that, hiring somebody that's 20 years old, just starting out and giving them 1 week versus somebody that's already built up that and has that expertise. You have to kind of, I just hired a gal not very long ago. She got immediately 2 weeks. She got, all the benefits, everything right up.
And I
That's fine, I just wanna make sure we're, not out of line with.
No, it's not crazy by any means. And a side note, he has a planned vacation that will be within that first 12 months of employment, which is why he's asking for the 2 weeks vacation. It's not even to be
Right.
honorary or whatever. He's got it planned already, so he's just trying to cover it,
I
really.
can't say much, I have 3 months, right, so.
So, what I'd like tonight, really quick, because I have a bet to win. So, what I'd like to do really quick is really just boil it down really quick as far as the ordinance goes. I think we're all agreeable in the offer that we're okay with that within reason. So my thing is, we may have to look at the term thing. I'll ask Greg about that, see if we need to change any verbiage about without term, because to me, that doesn't constitute a contract. That just says if we do have a contract, it can't be a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract. It's still, and our contract needs to be very simple in the sense that it only says, the certain benefits that they'll get, not the length of time they'll need. And then the other part of it would be just wording that, severance part, you know, determination, or,
I say we remove the termination pay language that's in there currently,
okay,
just altogether omit it and then just rewrite something about severance.
I'd say add it to that section when we
Yeah, I
appoint
would have
him,
that section.
we determine the salary and severance package.
okay. Fair enough.
I like
Would you, I would
City
just check
council
with
may
the,
determine.
with Grant and make sure that that's what he recommends. Get rid of, I agree, Kate, get rid of the one part, and I'm okay with putting it where Vince said. I just want to make sure it's okay legally, or, you know, whatever the legalese.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's legal.
You know what I'm saying? Just make,
have some.
I mean, it makes sense to me what Vince said. I think it works, but if it doesn't fit there legally or, you know, lawyers.
What I wanted really is to get the feeling of the council. So what I'll do, it may be a difference of 2 or 3 words that we're talking, but it'll be something that Grant's comfortable with and feels like he can defend, but it'll be in the spirit of what we discussed tonight.
Because the reality is, he's the one that, looking at our ordinance, felt like we couldn't do certain things because we specifically removed words. So it really doesn't do us a lot of good to come up with the words, because he's got to make it fit and feel comfortable. So I think take the things that we need to have done and have him suggest and.
And I may, if it's okay with the council, sorry, I cut you off.
But I think it's gonna get changed if we come up with the words and send it to him. He's gonna have to make it to where he's comfortable with our ordinance and what we're trying to do fit. And so I don't feel like coming up with specific wording right now is, it's gonna help us out that much.
I get the spirit of what we're trying to do, and we'll get it into words. So
Sorry, Mayor, do we need a motion to say that we want you to work with Grant to,
I think so.
would that help, I guess, is what I'm saying is.
I would almost, and not to, you know, nothing against Grant or anything, but I'd almost like a second opinion as well.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. I think it's a good idea because when you get an outside perspective, I mean, he's really intimately familiar with that because he just barely prepared it and he had certain intentions in mind. But the way that the average Joe would interpret it and the average lawyer and a judge would.
Without any history, they look at it.
So
So
I would move that you, based on our input here tonight, that I would move that you work with Grant and possibly a second pair of eyes to get the wording the way we intend it to be so that we can move forward with our city manager.
perfect.
Is
That sounds great. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then obviously they'll come back before council.
right, that's why I'm not worried, because I know it'll come back and we'll have a chance to vote on it, but I want to make sure you have permission to
Thank you.
get it done. So that's my motion, if anyone wants to.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll proceed as suggested. We have appointed city records officer. He's already appointed, but we have a deputy recorder that, Lee, you want to tell us?
So this came from Carolyn. This originated with her and then she couldn't be here tonight. So we're all running on a little bit of knowledge about this thing. I think there was some misunderstanding about the fact that, that the city needed to appoint a city records officer that was also certified with the state of Utah, which just requires taking an examination every year, saying that we understand grammar laws and record retention and that kind of thing. So I have completed that test for this year as well. It's easy. It's not skin off
She's
anybody.
being
It's pretty simple. And Kurt is planning to do it as well. So we'll actually have 2 that are certified with the state that have passed that test. That sticker that says we're doing everything right.
So do we have to appoint somebody?
No, we don't. It was just
He's
a,
appointed.
it was a misunderstanding
Okay.
on Kevin's part, but it is good that because we're now compliant with state code.
Because that's what we talked about before, because we were trying to improve our score, right? Remember we talked about?
Yeah, certain things.
Way to go, Kurt and Lee.
All right. On the purchase orders, I saw those go down. Was there any questions on those?
I had one minor one. Where's Grammy's ice cream? they got COVID money, which is great. I really like the list.
They have the trailer, it's parked over by the, by Subway.
Spilled milk?
Spilled
Is it
milk.
spilled
yes.
milk? Oh, okay. I just saw Grammy's ice cream. I go, what is Grammy's
You
ice
should
cream?
really go there.
I've heard spilled milk's really good.
That's their business,
Okay.
their business name.
That's all. I didn't recognize Grammy's ice cream, and now I see spilled milk. I know exactly what it is. I didn't know if there's a new shop in town. I didn't.
So, any other
And
questions?
that was money we got, right, from the feds that we.
Right.
It was CARES Act money.
Okay,
There's that,
right.
yes.
We motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
I move.
Okay, we have a motion. A second by Councilman Allen, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One thing that I do want to do is publicly apologize to Councilman Riley for our last meeting. I took a personal shot at him, and that was not proper. And when we were talking about, which actually raises another question that I wanted to talk to the council about. And that is about our city manager. So Vince, first of all, I apologize.
I forgive you.
I really do. And it's because he asked the question about, what's the public perception going to be? Because Scott has talked about, keeping his family out in the city, him buying a house and living here. That would technically satisfy the ordinance. Grant did bring that up. He said that, domicile could be contested if they're not here. So we may have to revisit that resolution, and I will make sure that we're done by the time I said, but I think it's really quick important to discuss that in all of these contracts and all of these ordinances that I looked in, there was one. And how many were there? I think there were 10, 12, something that
Yeah,
you sent me.
about a dozen.
And then I looked at prices as well, and I looked at Harriman's also. There was only one that mentioned residency.
No requirement for residency inside this.
There is not, except this one. The city manager need not be a resident or a qualified elector of Draper City at the time of his or her appointment or thereafter. So, I know,
So are all these places, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Are all these places that you looked at,
They're
in
all-
the big city or are they
I'll tell you.
rural areas?
They're on the Wasatch Front.
they are. So Spanish Fork, Linden City, Draper, Springville, Brigham City, Provo, South Salt Lake, Ogden, Vernal City doesn't even have it. Vineyard, and that's all of them that I looked at, and then Price and Harriman.
I know most, sorry.
Go ahead.
Again. I know most of the constituents that I talk to on a regular basis that always have concerns about the city would prefer that the city manager live in the city. So
And I
I
don't
don't
disagree.
know the rest of it.
I do have one comment on that. One of the things that's been very evident and clear is treating the city manager just like every other employee. We have several department heads and appointed positions that don't live in our city. So I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate, but what I'm saying is we're saying he has to live with the same things that they live with, but then we're adding more on. And what I'm saying is we either treat him fairly or we don't, or we treat him fairly. You know what I mean? We have 2 appointed positions that are outside the city. We have a department head or 2 that are outside the city. And we either apply that across the board, I feel, or we're a little bit flexible on that.
I think when you're bringing in the city manager from somewhere else and, we're negotiating severance and things like that, I think we should require him to live in the city.
Oh, I do too. I'm not saying that, but the question might come up, does he bring his family out? How strict does that have to be and where do we need to be on that? Because I think that needs to be a part of our conversation and offer to him. If we're stuck on that, he needs to be very clear on our expectations.
And I think the difference here is all of those cities you mentioned, they could live one block away from a street that just arbitrarily designates that as Provo or Springville or Lehigh, whereas us, all of the employees that live out of city limits they're in Duchesne or they're in Mighton, or, you know what I mean? They're very familiar with, and I think that's the purpose of it, is that high ranking position is very familiar with where our water source is and the water we're drinking and things like that.
Well, and also, you know, the mayor and the city manager combined make up the president of our city. And when you have a president that makes executive decisions for the city, not living within the city, I think it's not necessarily a good thing, because say the next mayor isn't so involved and he just starts making whatever decision he wants, and the mayor's just good with whatever because he's not really. Well, you can't really control it.
So I do want to mention really quick, he will be living in Roosevelt, right? They're looking at a home, I think, next weekend. Like, he's purchasing a home in city limits where he will be all week. It's just his family, which I know is still the issue that we're addressing, but he will be here.
I've spoken with them a little bit about this and just kind of got a better understanding that who here has teenage daughters? You know, they're involved in soccer. They've got their things, and right now, you know, disrupting their whole world is pretty tough for them. I can see down the road, then maybe, you know, once they get to know the area, have friends, stuff like that, it could change. And I mean, that's probably something that would happen, but right now, uprooting it would be a little tough, and concessions need to be made.
Yeah, and I guess
But
that's,
then why are you looking for jobs outside of your area?
well, yeah. Hey, you could go to Oregon. No.
Right.
But, and that's my thing, is that I want to know, one, because it was brought up by Grant today, the domicile, and so we might need to tweak that a little bit, or we might need to say, kind of draw a hard line and say, it's 6 months, or we may say, it does allow a little flexibility under like strenuous circumstances or those types of things. So, you know, we could say maybe after the school year, give him 9 months, whatever it is. But ultimately, I want to make sure that the council is comfortable knowing that. And as far as some of the 90% of the public isn't going to know, and they're not going to care. And then there's 10% that are going to know, and 5% of them will care, and 5 of them won't. So to me, it really comes down, it is really honestly a political public perception. It has nothing to do with legalities. Like I said, there's not one requires it. And I didn't see, again, Bernal's, and they're similar to us, Price is similar to us. I didn't see it in theirs either. I don't really care one way or the other. I just think we need to go in with an expectation and draw that line so that it is okay or it's not okay, and where's that line so it's very clear to him so that he can move forward and it's okay with us as far as that goes.
I totally agree with you. And I spoke with him about that last night. Because I think it's unfair to say like, oh, you know, 5% might lose their minds, but you know, we need to decide right now, is it okay or is it not okay?
For his family to live somewhere else?
Correct.
And the thing of it is it's okay legally. It's, are we gonna want to deal with the public pressure?
Right.
So here's
And I've heard it already from all of our department heads and appointed positions that aren't living in the city. I've already heard that, and I heard it from one, maybe 2 people in my whole tenure. So there's going to be one of those that are very passionate about it, 1 or 2 of those that are very passionate about it. But
I've heard it.
So the whole purpose of this hiring process that we went to, and I'm not trying to contradict myself, but the reason we did this large net that we threw was to bring people here that weren't already part of a family mafia or involved in you know, a business here that has an interest, or you know what I mean? And then plus to bring the most experience that we could find, and not that we couldn't find the individual here. We had one candidate that was very qualified, but by making that like umbrella, we accept the possibility that they may only maintain a weekly residence here. And as a council member, I'm willing to accept that and explain it in that way, that look, to get the talent we want to make the city better, we may have to make that slight compromise where they just live here during the week. And I agreed with what Don said last week, that we're in a new age where a lot of people do some serious commuting.
Mhm. And I like that thought because, and I've told Melissa this too, I just want to make sure that he's very clear on our expectations and we know what we're going to tell the public in that case. So, but for me personally, I look at it exactly how you explained it, Vince, that having that outside perspective, having the talent that we need to tackle the specific problems or areas of concern that we have in our city, that's my number one. And I feel like that's what's most important for the city. I know the perception is important to some. However, I'm more concerned with how much can we get done with this guy in the next 1 or 2 years and how much quicker we can accelerate our growth, especially internally with him. And that's what I'm concerned about. As long as we meet our expectations or the requirements by code, that's all I'm really concerned about. So, but we need to make sure that is spelled out to him, that we're okay with that. And if there is a modification that needs to be made in the ordinance, that we make that. Grant seems to
What
think
does the wording say now? A domicile? Why can't it say
Residence.
maintains a residence?
That's
That doesn't mean
that's
if you
exactly
live
what-
here or not. If you got a house here,
That's what it says.
you can call it a residence.
I thought it was domicile. Oh, never mind.
No, Grant's the one that I suggested that it could be considered domicile and that might be difficult to defend. I did talk to him about that also, and Justin Johnson took a couple of years to become a resident of Roosevelt City, even though our code said, he was living in Altamont, which isn't too awful far away. So, but anyway, as long as you guys are okay with that, I just want to make sure that he's clear with what I would like to see him and his family come eventually. And I think they will after about a year. They're going to see, what our community has to offer, and I think they'll be here. But I just want to make sure we go into that eyes wide open. And if we're questioned, like Vince said, we have an answer and we know exactly how to respond. So, are we okay with that? I don't think we need a motion. I just wanted to bring that up because.
It even says, it just says the city manager shall reside. If he has a
Yeah.
home here, he's residing. It doesn't say his family or anything.
That's how I see that.
So I don't think there's any, and I agree, I don't think we need a motion. And I also agree eventually, I think, it's like me and my family, we came on state for 4 or 5 years and 30 years later, we're still here.
Yeah.
He did say also that they had a couple of little trips out here with his family and his girls are kind of starting to really like it. And last night he said he was sure they would end up here sooner rather
I'm
than
not,
later.
that's.
So
the
no
least of my-
guarantees, but
that's the
they're
least
starting
of
to
my
love our
worries.
city.
So,
And I think they will. And if they don't, I don't see them sticking around.
I agree with you.
Anyway. So, which is, okay. Yeah, we got a half hour.
I'm just reminding you, said something and I was trying to help you. I have a class I do teach tonight, so.
Okay, we'll hurry here. So the purchase orders are approved, and I appreciate you guys being patient with that. I just wanted to make sure that I was very clear. Reports, do you have any reports for us?
The state, or the one meeting was canceled, it's next week. I didn't get the memo till afterwards, but that's okay. And then, I didn't make any of the others, so. Oh, the Park and Recs board.
I was here,
Yeah, it's in the morning,
but I was here.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Brian,
apologize, sorry, I canceled it like 5 in the morning.
yeah. Fortunately, Kurt was here, and he told me, as I said, isn't there a Parks meeting? Oh, no, sure, I can. But I got the RSVP for the next one. And I didn't make any of the others, I apologize. I teach Wednesday nights when we have the Parks and Rec group meeting.
I missed that last one too.
So,
But,
so I have no reports.
Councilman White, do you have anything for us?
We had ULCT board meeting yesterday. They talked about the virtual ULCT conference that'll be next week. Those of you who want to participate or have already signed up, just follow the agenda, watch what we can on the
Are
internet.
they're recording too, right? So we can watch it.
It'll all be,
That's what I thought, I remember.
How many of us are signed up now, Kurt?
Everyone but Councilman Baird.
He's on.
What am I not signed up for?
Not to just call you out or anything.
Throw my, that was my intent.
The League of Cities and Towns Annual Convention. There are a lot, actually,
So it's an online,
yeah, it's virtual.
You can stop over at Roosevelt CarQuest and we can watch it together. And you don't even have to.
I can try to, I can try to.
We probably should have done that. Just-
The deadline may have passed to get signed up, but I can check if you'd like.
Pay for one and just share the code even.
well,
Yes. Without that, I mean.
Yeah, let's
try and watch it with him.
Oh.
It's not gonna, I mean, I know they want to make the money.
The only problem is if we got together, we'd have to come sitting.
can't do.
Yeah, that would break the open
So we'd have
meetings
to,
act.
we'd have to share with the couple.
If there are any of you who want to go on Friday to the gubernatorial debate, it's going to be at the Salt Palace. They are allowing people, you have to wear a mask, you gotta be seated at 8:45, but you gotta send them.
Are you going?
They said RSVP by today,
Okay.
and, but none of you do, so if you do want to go, then I.
It's being broadcast too, though, right? I saw
But if
that.
you want to be there in person, they said they will be that.
Okay, I'll watch it.
The other thing the other main thing they talked about, the CARES Act funding, the third, what do they call it, trunk or whatever. That hasn't been determined how that will be distributed. The previous were distributed by population, I believe. Park City and Moab, especially cities that have lots of tourism, where their population full-time is only 8,000 or so, but at any one time, they have 70, 80,000 people in their town. That model doesn't work very good for them to receive compensation for the effect and the impact. So it's still not determined. I wasn't aware, as far as our city is concerned, is the money that we've gotten so far from the CARES Act been covering what we needed to cover?
Mhm.
Have we been using it all? So we probably are in a situation where the model works fine the way it is. There were some pretty hard cries from Park City and Moab that maybe we could do the third round already.
How much of our CARES Act money we've spent so far on Roosevelt City? Just
Approximately $100,000 has been obligated
Okay,
between, like when the police officers, we had them, some of them are out, and when the aquatic center was closed, we're doing some upgrades on the doors at the front, lots of sanitary supplies, trying to just touchless lighting if the council's noticed, things like that.
and so our total allotment was anticipated to be around 600 and what?
620,000.
20,000. So we spent 100 out of that so far. But a lot of that will go to grants and things like that.
Yeah,
for
then you
small
can add that to
businesses and-
291, so we've spent close to 400,000.
Now,
We've
what happens to the remaining that was allocated that hasn't been used yet?
Partake.
Does it get distributed to other people, or do we just use what we can use?
Yeah, and the part of it is the first two allocations came through, there weren't any, basically the state didn't have any requirements, but the third one, there's a possibility it may be reallocated. There were $1.3 million of applications for this and about almost $450,000 for Roosevelt City. But with the possibility of that third one may not come through to the city, I didn't feel comfortable when I met with them obligating more than what we've already received. So if we get that additional money, there may be some additional businesses that money can be used for.
Anyway, they were just concerned that that gets distributed where it needs to go. So I haven't asked how that has worked for our city, but my impression was that we've let people know about it, and whoever has applied for it has been able to get it, and there probably still some available.
And the counties, I think, they're looking at about $1.3 to $1.5 million of their allocation going to the small business recovery grant. So the approximately 25 in Roosevelt, that Roosevelt isn't taking out our money, the county's awarding them grants. So anybody who applied, there were a number that there were some who were going to be disqualified, but any of them that qualified, we're going to either between the city or the county, we're going to be awarded whatever amount they ask for up to the $10,000 maximum.
But that was just, if we needed to get input of how they should divide out the third round, but it sounds like it won't really affect us, so.
Well, we will make sure that the amount we're allocated will use, whether it's for the city or for businesses.
This is the problem that we can deal with. We seem to do this when our eyes.
Anything else that should do it? Councilman Baird? Do you have anything? Okay. Councilman Ryder, do you have anything for the county? Councilman Alonso?
We had a, I guess you would call it rec subcommittee, maybe trails, I don't know. 2 weeks ago with Rec Gilly, and he invited anybody who had organized a race or was holding annual races in the area. We kind of identified how, talked about how it was going, identified which ones we wanted to stick with, and maybe have the city help with, at least as far as advertising, getting the word out, and try to make those, bring more people in, get more resources. It was pretty good. There was a really good turnout. People I didn't know were holding races. We learned about some other opportunities. Got a cross-country team there. So anyway, there's some good things happening. And people in the community really want to help us stuff and get events going and organized. So I haven't made it to the actual Parks and Rec meeting, the last one. So I don't have anything to report there. This was just a subcommittee meeting.
Thank you. Lee, you were at that Parks and Rec committee. Could
I
you
was.
go us in a little bit?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that came out of that, for all of the council's information, is that on Monday, September 28th, the Arts Parks and Rec Committee, in partnership with the Prevention Coalition from Northeastern Counseling Center, is hosting Have Dinner with Your Family Night. It is National Have Dinner with Your Family Day, and Robin Hatch, if you know her at all with Northeastern Counseling, she's involved in everything, she's wonderful, has done a lot of work with studies that have shown that having dinner with your family decreases rates of alcoholism, it decreases rates of drug abuse, and it increases a lot of really positive mental health things for our community. It also decreases suicide rates. So they're encouraging everyone to come out to the park that evening. You can pack your own picnic lunch, or they're also inviting food trucks and local vendors to be there so that you can come and purchase dinner. You just come hang out in the park and have dinner with your family. And they're doing that in conjunction with kind of an unofficial grand opening of the disc golf course. Robin always purchases hundreds of Frisbees to throw out at parades in the summer. And we didn't have parades this summer, so she's got boxes and boxes of Frisbees. So they'll be giving away lots of Frisbees and inviting people to come and play on that disc golf course. So that is coming up on September the 28th, which was the biggest thing that they worked on. And then there was some other discussion about what subcommittees had been up to. We did get kind of a summary of that races meeting and what's happening there, but that was the biggest thing that came out of that Parks and Rec meeting.
That would be fun. And that's what we use for those Frisbee golf fields. That'd be cool. Yeah. Great, thank you. Ryan.
Oh, you can love this.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
I hate losing bets. I've got an hour.
Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I'm leaving anyways.
You said 38, right?
So you're curious, this is our master plan in a paper form. I'm not gonna read it, don't worry.
700 and some pages, or 500 and some, whatever.
You know what, I don't even know.
It's about, what did Sean say? He said about 500 pages.
Yeah, so that's something like that.
I've looked at all the pictures.
If there's pictures, I can read it.
No.
and some numbers.
Just Kimberly already updated on the airport, so you guys kind of know what's going on there, you're aware of the closure and what's happening there. As far as projects, the chip seal is going on right now, you've probably been around town and seen the mess. So we'll have that cleaned up. Ready this week, Kirby?
We'll finish up this week, we'll probably clean up maybe run into next week.
Yeah. The 500Es will be buttoned up next week too. It'll be final and out of the way, so they're just doing a little bit of the punch list and cleaning it up, so. We're currently doing a frac right now, so we're providing a lot of water south of town. And as soon as that one's done, we'll be starting another one, so if you ever have somebody ask you, I don't know, just FYI, we're pumping a lot of water to the pit on the North Mountain Bench.
And that water's not cold there, is it, or is it?
It is.
This one is,
If they pay for it, it's
they
not.
do,
They prefer culinary water when they do fracs because if there's any bacteria or anything in the water going down, contaminants, then that creates a lot of issues in the future. H2S and CO2 and those types of things.
yeah. In our agreements with them too, just so you know, our residents are priority, so that jeopardizes our citizens here as far as pressures and flows and quality, we're done, so. Number one's the residents and what we have here, so they'll be cut off if we jeopardize that. Then, let's see, we've already done a few things. Oh, while we're on water, I just wanted to report that we will have secondary water all the way to the second week of October. So we will make it, we won't run out, so that's good news. So if you get hit up on that, you'll have enough water.
Do we ever hear about the, one project that they were, was it Cedar View or whatever it was doing that we were gonna tie into?
Yeah,
Yes,
and go ahead.
As long as we're talking water, that came to my mind.
no, that was a good question.
Sore subject. No.
I'll just, they did get approved, with what they were asking for. What was the 65-35
Yeah,
grant loan?
yep, they
Their
were
Magi
approved
was what? Four? Was it Magi 4?
2.75 or close to 3.
Wow. No
Um,
points.
That's why they got such a good favorable funding package.
Anyway,
One thing about that though is the CIB board approved a lot of grants and loans in excess of what the money they're gonna have available. So when they have their funding meeting, first part of October, that may change for not only Cedarview and well, but other applicants as well.
Yeah, some packages are gonna change because they don't have enough money to do.
Do all the grants that they've obligated themselves to do.
Cedarview has a good project. They went in with, they didn't have hardly any hiccups, nothing like what we had to go through. So.
but what's the sore point? Are
The
they-
sore point?
That they didn't have issues or because they had such a high Magi compared to us or
Do I
because?
have to comment on this?
I will, you want me to?
No, I can, I just,
Go ahead.
well, so we agreed to a certain boundary, right? To what
Their
they want
bound,
to service.
their service boundary
But-
ends at this point.
Right, I remember the map you guys showed.
So in the meeting, we were watching it live here and the map shows up and it went further south and,
Quite a bit further,
yeah, towards us, so.
which is an area that we looked at and would have been our responsibility ultimately. So,
That's something, that's kind of another project I'm gonna push to the top now, that I'm gonna try and work on with Mayor and Grant.
So we need to
To get
negotiate
a
still with
boundary
them.
set, so we know our area and we know where we're servicing and it can't be crossed, so.
so when there's legislation coming out that says that we need to, this is something that I mentioned to our previous city manager when we were negotiating with Johnson Waters 6 years ago, is that we needed to define our area of service so that people cannot encroach, and it would have avoided this.
Yeah. But all in all, it's a good project. It gives us another feed in town.
Right,
It'll be good, so.
and you think we'll be able to negotiate what we need to help, because we have to get a little different size, right? 'Cause that-
We already did.
We already
Already
did.
did
That's
that.
what I presented last month.
Right, I knew that, and that's,
I did not know though that we have X amount of certain more feet,
Exactly.
so we gotta negotiate that out.
okay.
Talk about it.
Well, we committed to a certain dollar amount anyway, and even if that line exceeds that,
Yeah,
they knew we committed to a certain dollar amount.
Okay.
yeah, that's good.
Well, their proposed service area came closer to Roosevelt than what we were anticipating, correct? Is that what you're saying?
No, their service area, the pipeline that they're putting in has gone past their service area. They have a district.
Well,
Line.
shouldn't that cut down the amount of pipe we have to buy?
Well, it's out of their district and technically in the area that we would probably provide. And so it's kind of no man's land. So they didn't say that in CIB, or I think there would have been some questions there, and we were caught off guard, and that's why Ryan was a little bit. We both were a little bit.
So it just comes down to us
The first time I seen
defining
his head turn red,
those, defining those.
when he wasn't embarrassed. What's that, Don?
Just, we need to define those boundaries.
We need to define our boundaries so people don't continue to encroach
Right,
on areas that we already have infrastructure. And the whole reason for that is to not duplicate systems.
right, exactly.
And so,
That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's just something we have to work out with it.
yeah. We'll work on it. We're already had thoughts. This next item isn't really urgent. I just feel like it may be sensitive, so I'm just gonna ask. I don't need your vote or anything like that, but it's to do with, and I don't even know if you guys even know where they're at. There's 2 signs out on Highway 40 that say welcome to Roosevelt. Do you guys know where signs I'm talking
The
about?
golf ones?
no.
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah.
The ones that say, see, because I remember a couple of years ago, we had one of those Facebook contests to see what needed the biggest improvement in Roosevelt. And you could take pictures of your sidewalk or part of the street, and then they were gonna go fix it. And that was the one that actually won. That was the one that won the contest, and we were supposed to replace those.
Well, we've got a company that's offered us money for them and take over them, even paying the lease that we have right now. Like the one on the east side, we currently pay $3,600 a year for it to be there. So before I make that move or a decision with the staff, I just kind of wanted to get the feeling and the vibe from you guys. If you want to keep them, we can, and we'll redo them, make them look better, or give them up and sell them.
So basically, they're just advertising for a golf course, and they,
No, they were advertising, it's an advertisement company.
Yes, Yesco, the
Well,
young.
no, what he's asking is the current signs
Oh,
that we
yes,
have
it
is
says
just
welcome
kind
to
of
current sign.
Roosevelt, play golf, or,
Just road running.
yeah, do some road driving.
yeah. So it seems like to me, that's more of like a, hey, come golf in Roosevelt. You know, you're here, so do it, or whatever.
Does anybody know where the one on the east side or west side of town is?
This one over here?
Yeah.
Wait, that way?
That's what's down.
I did, it's hard to see, it really
The
is.
west side, yeah.
Yeah, out on the west side,
That's how,
sorry.
west of town, yes.
So I don't know, I just wanted to get your.
So the deal is we would give up the advertising rights. They would pay our lease plus how much?
Not 9,000, but it'd be one, they've offered for the one sign on the east side of town, that so far,
Okay.
just the one.
So instead of being in the whole 3,600, we would be ahead of 9,000.
I don't have a
No,
problem.
we wouldn't have a billboard.
The only
But we
thing,
wouldn't have to pay for it.
Could I request we put the rest area sign back up by the cemetery? That was my favorite. You take care of that?
Well, the man's here.
You remember that?
Yeah, I got stolen.
That was my favorite sign. It made it on Jay Leno, I think. That was one of the greatest. Some of you guys probably weren't here when that was up. We had a rest area sign because the rest area is right past the cemetery. It said, Rest area.
The Roosevelt sign used to do the golf course, or the cemetery, you know, on the west. They took that one out.
So I would like that one back up personally, but that's another issue as well.
Real quick, to his question, what do you think? Should we do it? Should we keep it?
The only concern I have, and it's kind of bothering me that we haven't done anything with those signs yet, was that we committed to the public in response to that contest that was done, that we would replace those with better signs, but honestly, I don't have a problem.
We do have design
Can
made
I
out.
give you some information on that?
Yeah,
At the time, we actually did replace those billboards using the suggested design that was offered to us by the person who suggested it. And the intention originally was to replace them every 6 months. But that became very cost prohibitive, which was the reason that it didn't move forward. And the first set of signs that we ordered were not of like significantly high quality. We didn't really know what we were doing. But we did replace them. We did publish the fact that we did use the design suggestion that we were given as far as what we should advertise. So that did happen, and we did follow through on that public promise, just so you're aware.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to move forward myself. I don't have any concerns anymore.
So I don't have concerns. I think we should do it.
Yeah, we try to get
Good
them,
enough.
see if we can get them both.
I want to negotiate where it gets all
Yeah, that's what I'd recommend too, if we're gonna do
the
it.
price. We're gonna do some.
And then put some on our own property. We can put some on our own property. at some point.
Oh, I thought you were requesting to put the old sign.
No. I'm just saying at some point.
Once that someone spoke to the rest area sign, that was my favorite.
Hey, I'm about to lose that. Go ahead, Ryan.
He's milking it pretty good.
No, I can't go for another 40 minutes. It's not gonna work. My last thing I do have is, if you remember right, the bench that we were gonna do in Old Mill Park. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
I did follow up on that. We talked to Robin Hatch, and she's saying, no, let's not do that. So anyway, out of respect, we got with them and took care of that. But I just wanted to give you an update.
Thank you.
So,
I'm glad you checked on it.
We don't want to memorialize.
And that was the
Golf course
question,
or
right?
park.
Right.
That was your concern, and Robin,
Because I didn't have a
She
problem.
basically said what you quoted, so.
Well, I'm glad someone agreed with me. That's unusual, but besides that, that was my concern all along. I have no problem personally if someone wants to do it, but at the same token, that, like I said, that was my concern. So thank you for following up. And also mention, I appreciate you following up with the skunk. That was awesome. You know, I didn't get the pictures, but
There's another one.
You're working on
It's
another
getting
one?
personal now. There's another one.
great, thank you, Ryan, appreciate that. Unless there's anything else,
I move we adjourn.
okay, we have a motion. Second by Councilman Allen, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
You made it, just didn't, you missed the best part of this.